Hi, today I'm looking at the second main solo in Down to the Waterline by Dire Straits. So it's another Mark Knopfler solo. Absolutely brilliant one. It's probably one of his best solos, I think. But let me know what you think after you've had a go at playing it. It's a little bit more difficult to play than some of his others, but it's worth putting the effort in. It's a really good solo. Very melodic, and the way it fits with the chords is perfect, really, I think. Anyway, the song's in B minor. There's a bit of a key change partway through the song in the middle of this solo. It's very obvious, you'll hear it. It doesn't really matter too much because we're playing specific notes over specific chords. You don't really need to think about the key too much. But anyway, it starts in B minor, as with the rest of the song. This is the second main solo, so I've done another lesson on the intro solo and then the first main solo once you're into the song. Already looked at those, hopefully you've seen those. And then this is the second one. So get right into it. B minor position, as you'd expect, probably 7th position, where you can find a pentatonic minor and the Dorian and the natural minor and all the sort of minor scales in B. If you've learned them, then they'll be there probably. And that's where he's starting off. A lot of these phrases are very similar to ones found in the other solos. So if you've looked at those, some of this will be quite familiar. Okay, so we start off on the 4th string, 7 and then a 9. And then 3rd string, 7, hammer on to 9, pull off to 7. Quite fast hammer on, pull off. That's... And then the next one, we go back to the 4th string, 7, play that and hammer on to a 9. And then just like in the first solo, in the sort of the main solo in the song, we go to the 3rd string, play the 7, hammer on to 9, bend to an 11, so you're making the 9 sound like an 11, release so it sounds like a 9 again, pull off to a 7, hammer on to a 9. So it's quite a lot of notes all with one pick, like this. And then after that, play the 9 again, and then play the 7 again, both on the 3rd string. So that little phrase was... So it flows really well, that. Might take a little bit of practice. And then there's a little fast kind of filler, if you like, this one. It's not like one of the main phrases of the solo, but it's this little quick sort of filler that he puts in. This one is easier to play if you play in his style with fingers. If you're using a pick, you can still do this, but it might not quite have the same sound. We play 3rd string, 2 7s, and then 9, pull off to 7. 9 on the 4th string, back to the 7 on the 3rd. Then 4th string, 9, 7, 9, 9. So it's... And on the end of that, it kind of catches the 2nd and 3rd strings open. It's not really, it doesn't sound like an intentional thing, it's just this sort of sound that comes through. So you might not want to bother with that, but that's what I can hear on the record. So it's... And then there's a position change. Now if you've played the previous solo, you'll recognise this phrase. You move back down to 4th position, which is here, and put little finger on the 7 on the 2nd string, 3rd finger on the 7 on the 3rd string. You play those 2 strings, 2nd and 3rd, but bend the 3rd string only. Don't bend the 2nd string. Bend the 3rd string up a tone, so it makes the 7 sound like a 9, like this. And then once it's reached the 9, you let it down to a 7 again, and then straight away, as soon as it's down, you then move the little finger to an 8 and play those 2 strings together. So it's like this. And then we move the same shape we're on there along 2 frets, so it's 9 and 10. Play those 2 strings, quickly slide along 2 frets to 11 and 12, and then go back and play the 9 and 10 again. So those 2 together were... Now it's interesting the way those notes fit with the chords and the reason why they fit with the chords. I explained that on the previous solo lesson, so have a look at that, and you may already know, you may be able to see why we're playing these notes, but have a look at the other video if you're not sure. Okay, and then it completely changes here, it actually changes key, and he's really following the chords, and some of the phrases here are just perfect in my opinion. They're just amazing like phrases that he's playing over these chords. So there's a rake to begin with, and a rake is where if you're using a pick, you kind of drag your pick down the strings quite quickly. If you're using fingers like he does, it'd probably be thumb, first, second, or over 3 strings like this. So it's halfway between picking individual notes and strumming. It's kind of halfway between. It's the kind of thing Mark Knopfler does a lot, Dave Gilmour does it a lot, and people like that. So you'll hear rakes a lot in solos. So you want to flatten the first finger down at 9th fret, covering the first 4 strings. Now we're not playing the first string, but it doesn't matter if you're touching that. And you do a rake from the 4th to the 3rd to the 2nd. And the main note you want to hear there is the 9 on the 2nd string. And then we play a 10 on the 2nd string and a 12 on the 2nd string. Now something you might notice there is that I didn't do this. I used 3rd finger there. And that's because the next note I need to bend this string here, so I really want that finger to be there for the bend. So, and then you play that note again at the 12 on the 2nd string, bend it up a tone, so making the 12 sound like a 14. So we bend that one up after the rake. And you're holding it at so it sounds like a 14, then you pick it again, let it come down to sound like a 12 again, so it's... And then a little bit of an awkward jump, you have to get 2nd finger to the 9 on the 2nd string, play that note and pull off to an 8. So that whole phrase was... Definitely needs to be that fingering really for this. And then leave your finger there, put the 2nd finger on the 9 on the 3rd string, so you've now got 2 fingers on, and you play the 3rd string, play the 2nd string, but before you play the 2nd string you put your 3rd finger on, so it's a 10, and then pull off to the 8, like this. And it does that a couple of times. And there's a little bit that follows on from that, which we'll look at in a sec, but one thing to quickly mention. As he pulls off this 10 to 8, his finger catches the first string open, and I think it's probably intentional. It sounds really nice. It sounds like this. I don't know if that's coming through very well, but if I do it a bit harder, that was too loud. So I don't want to hear the first string as loud as that. It's just a subtle thing in the background. And keep those fingers there still. Put your 3rd finger on the 1st string 10, play that. Play the 8 on the 2nd string and hammer onto a 10. Then play the 9 on the 3rd string again, followed by 8 on the 2nd. So that's a complete phrase, is this, played slowly. So then this part is quite tricky. You have to play another rake, like we did before at the 9. It's very similar to the phrase we played here. Very similar phrase, but at 12, a rake like before, and then you follow on with some other notes we'll look at in a sec. But there's a catch to this one. What he actually did on the original recording was, or to my ears anyway, it sounds like he played an 8 on this string and slid very quickly to the 12 and then completed the rake. So the rake is like 4th, 3rd, 2nd strings, like that. He started it here. So you get this cool sliding effect. And that's quite hard to get when you're intentionally trying to play it exactly like that. Mark Knopfler would have just played it like that because he was in this position from the previous bit and he's just jumping up to there. So he probably didn't think I'm going to play an 8 and slide it, but that's just what comes out. But I think it sounds good though. Once you've got to there, you then play 13 on the 2nd string, 15 on the 2nd string, hold it for a split second and then bend it up. And whilst that's ringing, you're bending up a tone to sound like 17. You play 15 on the first string, and then play the second string, which is being held, and let it come down again. So it's... And then we play second string 12, 15 and bend it again. And you hold it again like we did before, but instead of a 15 this time on the first string, it's a 13. So you're holding this second string up. It's a bit awkward this bit, but it's really nice. Play the 13 on the first string, then play the 15 on this string and let the bend down. So it's... And then second string you play 13, then 15. And then we play the 13 again and slide down. This is a bit awkward. You slide down to an 8. So that was... And once that's there, hammer on to 10. Do a pre-bend with the second finger on the third string, which is a 9, but you're pre-bending so it sounds like a 10. So there's 10. Pre-bend, if you don't already know, is where you bend it without playing it. So all you hear is the bent note. Let it down to a 9. And then fourth string 8, slide to 7. I think that's probably the most complicated bit of the whole song, that one phrase. So I'll just go from this bend up here again and play it slowly. It's also possibly the best bit of the whole song, I think. It's just a lovely phrase, that. And then it kind of changes key again. So we jump down to a totally different position now. And this is really cool as well, this bit. So you play an open, this is if I've worked it out right. I think I've worked it out correctly, but put in the comments if you think any of this is not in the right place. But I think there's a couple of open strings in this part. We play the fourth string open, hammer onto a 4. Third string open, hammer onto 2, like this. And that brings you neatly with your second finger to the third fret of the second string. And I'm going to play that note, slide to a 5, and then slide to a 7. So it's... And then first string, first finger, 5, third finger, 7. So that was... I think it wants to be those fingers, because then the next part is a shape that you might be familiar with, which looks like this. Third string 7 with your second finger, and then third finger on the 7 on the first string where it already was. And then what we do is play the third string, slide up to 9, and then play the first string, and then play the third string again. So I'm just going to add that to the previous bit. Then we go straight into a slightly awkward phrase, which is 12, I'm using third finger for this. 12, 9, hammer onto 12, pull off to 9. And then 10 on the second string, slide to 12. 7 on the second string, hammer onto 10. 6 on the third string, hammer onto 9. And then there's a very faint open third string, which is probably his finger just coming off. So a little bit tricky, that part. So after this, and then we go to an 11. Another one of these shapes. It's not a rake this time, but it's the same shape we were using for those rakes. But this time we're at 11. And what it does is kind of hammer on to the fourth string, and sort of slides into it. The slide's not important, I don't think, but anyway, the hammer on is, so he doesn't actually pick that string. So he hammers onto the 11 on the 4th string, plays the 11 on the 3rd and on the 2nd, and then on the 4th again. So it's, and then keep that finger there, 2nd finger on the 2nd string, 12, play that note and pull off to the 11, then play the 3rd string 11. Stay in the same position. This is obviously playing around the chord again. He's playing the notes of the chord. And then we play 3rd finger on the 13 on the 3rd string. Bend it up a tone, so you're bending it so it sounds like a 15. And then we play a 14 on the 2nd string. Play the 13 again that you're holding here, let it down, and pull off to an 11. So that was a typical Knopfler sort of country phrase that one. And then similar thing, but 12th fret this time, because the chord has changed. So we're now playing around a G chord, this is part of a G chord. He plays 4th string, 3rd string, 2nd string, and then 15 on the 2nd string, pull off to the 12, which this finger's holding. Then play 3rd string and 4th string. That was very typical kind of Knopfler phrase over a G chord. Just thinking there's a G chord, there's another one there. So he's using those notes from this one, and then that note from that one. Or you could think of it as being from the G pentatonic major scale. And then a lovely little bit to end, which is a 17 on the 2nd string. Another rake. This is a rake where it's quite tricky to do this with a pick, but if you're using fingers, it's not too bad. You want to end up on that note with the 2nd string, 2nd finger, but with your thumb and then your 1st finger, you're playing muted notes on these 2 strings. So very slowly it becomes this. Then on the end of that, a really nice phrase, 2nd string, pick the 15, pull off to 14, slide to 12, slide to 10, hammer on to 12, all with one pick. And then on the end of that, that's actually the end of the solo, but then he goes into the chord sequence that he played at the end of the first solo, which we've already looked at. Hopefully you've seen that one, which is just playing the middle part of an F sharp minor from that chord, middle part of an A from that shape, and the middle part of an E from this shape that he slides into. It's basically this. And I explained that a bit more detail on the previous one. So yeah, just get that last phrase into those chords. It's and he continues sort of playing fiddles and things throughout the song. So that's the whole solo. That's a little bit difficult, that one, but it's worth looking into and spending a bit of time on it. It's a great solo to do, I think. Yeah, any problems with that, please put them in the comments below, and if you like it, please click like and subscribe if you haven't already. Okay, thanks.